In this day and age, school violence is getting totally out of control. Studious kids are getting bullied left and right, and when teachers try to call them out, they just get a smack to the head. To put an end to this mess, the school chairman launched a project called Dominance, or in other words, fighting fire with fire, controlling violence through violence. The big question is, who's actually capable of running this project? And it's none other than this guy right here, a legend known as Gun. After he graduated, he immediately gave the school bullies a massage they'd never forget. Some ended up with broken arms, some with bent backs, and others, well, let's just say they suffered some sensitive injuries. He brought long-lasting peace to the school, so naturally, he was invited to join the project. Once again, he's putting on the uniform to clean up the school from top to bottom. He's handsome, shredded with a six-pack. His singing hits hard, and his punches hit even harder, making all the ladies swoon. Alright, no more stalling. Let's dive right in. Our story starts in the past with Daegun, a totally average student at a very average school. Despite that, because he looked scrawny and was naturally soft-spoken, Daegun became the go-to target for the neighborhood punks. At first, when those troublemakers started flicking eraser bits at him, Daegun just assumed it was an accident. "Oh, my bad. I think I threw that eraser at you," they'd say. "Sorry, man, I was actually aiming for the guy in front of you." They'd laugh and say that to Daegun, but in front of Daegun, there wasn't a single soul, so he realized what was really going on. But realizing it is one thing, actually fighting back is a whole different story. Even though he kept taking it, the punk just kept pelting him with eraser bits. You know what they say, patience is a virtue. But when you've had enough, there's only so much you can take. So after a while, Daegun finally turned around and asked the punk to quit the games. Hearing that, the punk didn't feel a hint of remorse. Instead, he got all defensive and aggressive. To him, the fact that Daegun dared to talk back was completely unacceptable. So, to save face, he didn't feel like he needed to listen to Daegun at all. When he saw Daegun approaching him with an angry look, Daegun suddenly felt terrified. He tried to explain that he just wanted to be left alone and had no intention of insulting him or starting a fight. But that punk? He was the type who preferred fists over words. Instead of listening to Daegun's reasoning, he stopped throwing erasers and went straight for a slap to Daegun's face. Feeling like something was definitely wrong, Daegun tried to apologize just to move past it. But instead of stopping, that little thug kept slapping the heck out of him. Watching from the sidelines, the other classmates just stood there watching the show without caring at all about the bullying. Only when a teacher arrived did one of them run over to pull the bully off. As soon as the teacher showed up, Daegun thought his life was saved. But the reality was the exact opposite. Even though he tried to signal for help, the teacher just turned a blind eye, telling both of them to stop playing around. Daegun was in total shock. He couldn't believe his own teacher could look at what just happened and dismiss it as nothing more than a joke. It was hopeless. He couldn't get the bully to stop, and he couldn't get anyone to help him out of this nightmare. All Daegun could do was bite his lip and endure it. Even when the bully stuck a piece of paper on his back saying, "No, Mom," he couldn't fight back. The reason was simple. He had no one to share his pain with. Adults didn't care, and nobody wanted to help him. He was truly alone in his own classroom. However, things started to change when another bully showed up in Daegun's class. It wouldn't have been a big deal, but he walked in asking for a cigarette and spotted the paper on our guy's back. Since he wasn't into childish games, the guy in the white shirt grabbed Daegun and read what was written on the note. As soon as he saw no mom, the thug got furious, started questioning everyone, and found out that Daegun's classmate was the one behind the bullying. Without a word, the guy in the white shirt blew up. Sensing that a storm was coming, the little punk tried to justify it by saying he was only targeting an orphan, not mocking the guy in the white shirt. But hey, stupidity is a death sentence. The guy in the white shirt was also an orphan, and that jerk's childish game was absolutely unacceptable. So, without further ado, he absolutely wrecked Daegun's classmate mercilessly for being a weakling who loved playing dirty. He beat that bully until his own parents wouldn't recognize him. Watching everything unfold, Daegun was scared at first. But thinking about how the guy in the white shirt defended his own dignity with overwhelming strength, Daegun decided to become stronger than anyone so that no one could ever bully him again. Time flew by, and Daegun's hard work and growth began to pay off. From martial arts books to intense physical training and studying combat techniques from televised matches, Daegun's skill level and physique improved significantly. The training kept getting harder, and he memorized even more books on martial arts. Over and over, his height, weight, endurance, and strength grew at a breakneck pace day by day, until, finally, he completely transformed into a new person. After being gone for a while, Daegun finally returned to school. But unlike the soft-hearted kid he used to be, he was now turning heads with his brand new, upgraded body. Still, not every girl wanted to get close to him, because he was now a school boss, someone who used violence to fight violence. That was Daegun's past. But now, he has changed and is just a regular guy working as a clerk at a small convenience store. School violence, what they call the woojin, will no longer be under the control of teachers. But even so, those bullies are becoming dependent on the woojin, the ones stronger than them. That's the main topic of the project the lady named SA wants to present, titled Woojin Dominance. Through this project, SAM will form a team responsible for managing the in from the shadows. Or you could say this is a project to control in by using in itself. Based on SAM's presentation, the plan sounded pretty interesting, but controlling violence with more violence is completely insane. So, some council members at the meeting urged the old chairman to reject SAM's ridiculous project. But the old chairman didn't care if SAM's plan was actually a bad idea or not. Because after hearing what his employee had to say, all he wanted to know was whether anyone had the guts to take over Chin. Back to Daegun. Even though his part-time job was fairly stable, Daegun still felt completely miserable and couldn't even focus on his work. On top of that, he had to listen to his boss nagging him with life lessons all day. It was sickening. Daegun wouldn't be in this situation if he hadn't dropped out of school. But it's too late for regrets now. That's why, right at this moment, he really just wanted to find somewhere to clear his head. Cutting to an alley near the convenience store where Daegun works, a group of bullies is, as usual, cornering some weak kid to shake him down. But to a weak student, they might be sharks. But to someone stronger, these tattooed punks and their crew are just small fry. So, when they heard their senior Bao tell them to stop and go buy cigarettes, the tattooed guy and his girlfriend obeyed immediately without daring to say a word. Back to Daegun. After a long session of being lectured, he finally got some peace. When those two walked in, the store owner broke into a cold sweat, looking for an excuse to check the staff room and the accounts, just to slip away and leave Daegun alone at the register. The moment his boss left, he had to deal with some genuine punk customers. Just by looking at the pair, Daegun realized right away they were just high schoolers. Feeling it wasn't right for these kids to be buying cigarettes, Daegun asked the guy to show him some ID. But, being just students, they didn't have any. So, to deflect, the tattooed punk started giving him a bunch of nonsense. Knowing exactly what this keyboard gangster act was about, Daegun told them both to get lost. Getting told to get lost by a part-time clerk didn't sit well, so the punk's girlfriend started mouthing off to threaten Daegun. Next to her, the tattooed guy jumped in to back her up, throwing money right in Daegun's face. He hadn't seen a brat dare to act like this in years, and deep down, he really wanted to punch the guy's teeth in. But for the sake of his paycheck, Daegun kept a polite face and asked for ID again. Hearing that, the loudmouth punk not only ignored Daegun but blatantly grabbed 2 more bottles of alcohol just to show off for his girlfriend. It was infuriating. Daegun told him to cut the crap, since he was getting such a hard time over just buying cigarettes and booze. The punk, acting on impulse, grabbed Daegun by the collar and barked, "Do you even know who my old man is?" He told him to lower his tone, or he'd break his jaw so Daegun couldn't run his mouth anymore. Watching from the back, the store owner already knew the tattooed guy was trouble, so to avoid any unnecessary mess, he ran out to intervene. Knowing he couldn't reason with the punk, he apologized and suggested Daegun go outside to settle it so it wouldn't affect other customers. Even though he hated how his boss let things escalate, he had no choice but to deal with the punk. The idiot kid thought that once they were outside, Daegun would change his attitude and start trembling in fear. He glared at Daegun. Hey, you mutt, say what you just said again. We're outside now, you want me to beat you to a pulp? Getting beaten up outside meant this part-time gig was no longer safe. But reality isn't like a movie. Not only did Daegun ignore the threats, he actually acted even more arrogant, ordering the guy to let go of him. Daegun gave the punk 3 seconds to take his hand off his collar. Hearing that, the punk's girlfriend laughed mockingly. Ha, are you giving us 3 seconds? This guy's an idiot. Is he crazy? Are we being filmed? She thought Daegun had to be completely out of his mind to speak to her boyfriend like that. Daegun started counting down from 3. The tattooed punk prepared to give Daegun a slap to show him who was boss. And just like that, he was out like a light. The punk heard his girlfriend's voice calling him to wake up. When he finally opened his eyes, the tattooed guy realized he'd been knocked out in a heartbeat. A true keyboard warrior. Even though his face was a mess, he still refused to accept it, claiming it was just a moment of carelessness and that Daegun had sucker punched him. He insisted that in a fair fight, Daegun would be missing teeth by the mouthful. But even while bragging, the punk didn't forget to signal his girlfriend to call for backup. But because he couldn't speak clearly, the girl asked him to speak louder. Hearing that, the punk shouted at her to get more people to come and jump Daegun. Getting yelled at, the girl scurried off to find their gang. On the other hand, the punk started acting all high and mighty again, asking Daegun, huh, damn, you loser. Don't you live in this city? Do you know who I am? Do you know who our group is? That you dare to talk back to me? It sounded pretty intimidating, but Daegun had dealt with plenty of these keyboard gangsters. Ignoring the bluster, Daegun kept his tone calm and gentle, asking the guy about his age. He still refused to say. Feeling the guy didn't want to talk nicely, Daegun pinched the punk's collarbone and squeezed hard. In less than 3 seconds, the tattooed guy let Daegun know he was only 17 years old. Despite the guy screaming in pain, Daegun calmly threatened that if he ever showed up to buy cigarettes again, he'd make sure his own parents wouldn't recognize him. Just then, the girl showed up with the gang. While the punk looked pretty embarrassed as he sought his friends, Daegun stayed totally relaxed to him. Having a few more chickens to deal with made no difference. Friends, huh? That's a lot of you. Quite a gathering, isn't it? Daegun said calmly. Even so, looking at the big guy standing in front of him, Daegun knew there was no way he was just a high school student. So I was pretty curious if that young punk was gonna call his uncle over or not. Hearing that, the fatty immediately retorted that he was Owen, a student from Namdaean High. He spoke with such a cocky attitude. I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna punch you first. Right after saying that, the fatty didn't even care who was standing in front of him and just planned to deck Daegun right in the face to show him who's boss. And then, poof. With just a flick of the cheek from Daegun, that delusional kid had his mouth completely twisted and rolled onto the street, passed out instantly. The princess next to him was bewildered, not understanding how it happened. Who would expect someone as big as an ox to collapse after just one strike? As for Daegun, since he still had a lot to do, he told them he couldn't stay there any longer. All of you, come at me at once so we can get this over with. Insulted, the tough-talking thugs were furious and moved in to settle the score with Daegun. However, because they only had the appearance of middle school bullies, while their actual skills were as weak as a twig, it was no trouble at all for Daegun to serve them a beating. Daegun kept dodging their attacks, then countered with incredibly fluid, yet lethal strikes. Not a single wasted motion parrying, dodging, using elbows, and uppercuts. The thugs kept rushing in, only to be left gasping for air under Daegun's hands in a flash. Trying to avenge the beating he took earlier, that guy Samcho decided to go all out against the guy with a bottle he picked up. He got what he wanted when Daegun turned around and the punk truly went all out, meeting Daegun's gut-wrenching punch, and flew like a kite in the wind, straight into a corner. In less than 3 minutes, the whole pack was licking their wounds on the ground. The leaders saw that and immediately realized that the only person around here this strong could be one man. Not wanting to play the fool anymore, the leader of the tough talkers softened his tone and greeted his senior, Daegun. You used to go to the same school as him in the past. Hearing the name Dagon, that princess immediately realized that he was the one who controlled the Incheon area during its bloody era 2 years ago, but he had been wiped out by this guy in just 1 week. I heard that getting shot is better than getting beaten by Dagon, but he looks pretty handsome, so as expected, rumors are just rumors, right? Seeing Tai-sun, the leader bowed his head to apologize and promised never to cause trouble in Dagon's territory ever again. So, he hoped Dagon would let him and his underlings go this time. Fed up with the noise, Dagon grabbed the leader by the hair and told him not to spout nonsense anymore. As for the princess, because she was so obsessed with playing around, her life might be spared, but she would still have to pay the price. As for the idiots lying scattered on the ground, the leader volunteered to take the whole gang to the hospital, but thinking he was smart, there was no hospital at all. A moment later, the leader had to slap the fatty in the face to wake him up, ignoring the fact that the fatty had no idea what was going on. The only thing the leader wanted the fatty to do now was to bow and accept his punishment. As for Dagon, after the lesson, he warned the whole group not to act up at the convenience store ever again, otherwise they would know what it feels like to say goodbye to their lives. Hearing that, they all said in unison that they understood, because no matter how stupid they weren't crazy enough to mess with the legend of Incheon one more time. From afar, while Dagon was handling the punks and talking about why he dropped out, a figure had been lurking and watching him for a while. A moment later, while he was lost in thought about the events of the past that kept him from finishing school, because of those bullies, I never had time to study, but man, it felt good to vent after such a long time. Right then, Dagon bumped into Saw-im on the street. Since she had prepared beforehand, as soon as she walked past, she requested a conversation. However, since he didn't have the time, Dagon wasn't very interested, but Saw-im didn't seek out Dagon just to chat. With a business card in hand, she wanted to make Dagon an offer he couldn't refuse from Kim Long Education.